This isn't a hearing about protest. It's a hearing about organized political violence and who is writing the checks.
We're talking now about arson, bomb threats, firearm incidents, and shootings, as well as vandalism more broadly. The Biden administration prosecuted about 0 of these particular threats in their time in office. You're anti-doxing or pro-doxing?
Anti-doxing, Senator.
So, and you were talking about norms, that we're struggling with norms now around the internet and what is public and what not. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, Senator.
So what would you say about elected officials who are actively doxing federal law enforcement agents?
Senator, I'd say that's problematic behavior.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that. Well, let's just be a little more specific. The doxing of ICE agents, the doxing of Border Patrol agents that elected members of Congress have engaged in. Do you think that's a norm that ought to be encouraged?
No, Senator.
Would you condemn it here today?
I condemn anti-democratic behavior that puts individuals at risk when there are alternatives.
Well, I'm sorry, what does that mean? Does that mean no, not really, or what? You're saying it's wrong to dox these people or not?
Yes, Senator, I'm saying it's wrong to dox individuals instead of using normal order, policy debates, civil discourse, voting to address differences in a democracy.
Good. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad you're here to say that. I think that's important. And I think that your point about norms is well taken. But I've been shocked, just on the doxing question, I've been absolutely shocked to see elected members of this body and of the House of Representatives actively advocating for the doxing of federal law enforcement officers and then doing it. Some of them posting information about ICE agents, trying to post their pictures online, trying to post where they live online. I mean, that's unbelievable. And I don't want that to happen to anybody. Judges, sure, but let's start with our federal law enforcement who are out there doing a terrific job and literally putting their lives on the line. I think of our brave police officers, there's some in this room here who currently are not getting paid, by the way. It's the idea that these folks would be doxxed is, I think, just unbelievable. I would plead with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to stop this. Mr. Knowles, while I've got you here, welcome. Great to have you here. Can we just drill down a little bit on the political violence question and maybe just do even a little more truth-telling? Because I feel like we talk about political violence generally. We talk about violence against conservatives generally, but let's just be real specific. A lot of the violence that we're seeing is actually against people of faith, and more particularly, it's against Christians. Isn't that fair to say?
That's certainly fair to say, Senator.
I mean, Charlie Kirk, what he said just a month before his death, and I heard it, he said it to me. I mean, Charlie was a friend. I knew him for almost a decade before his assassination. What he said was the legacy he wanted to leave was a legacy of faith. What he wanted to be known for was his faith in Jesus Christ. And I thought he was just incredibly bold about saying that publicly all the time. You know, when he could be talking about politics, and sure, he talked a lot of politics, of course, but what he really talked about was his faith. And you can't tell me that did not play into the reason that he was killed. Let's look at some numbers, though. Here's the Center for Religious Liberty. These are some recent stats. The most recent stats that we have for the year 2024, 415 separately reported instances of acts of violence against churches in the United States. We're talking now about arson, bomb threats, firearm incidents, and shootings, as well as vandalism more broadly. The Biden administration prosecuted about 0 of these particular threats in their time in office. What do you think it says that we're seeing this massive uptick in violence against people of faith, against Christians? I mean, what's the reason for this, do you think?
Cardinal Manning wisely observed that all human conflict ultimately is theological. A lot of our big policy debates in recent years have really been anthropological and religious in nature. What is a man? What is a woman? These kinds of questions. And there is no doubt, Senator, that the attacks, widespread and increasing, on churches has been underreported and ignored in some cases entirely. You know, there's been a lot of dispute over where the violence lies, on the left or on the right, and we've observed, now it seems, I think, indisputable that it's mostly on the left, but in earlier years, it has been observed that a lot of incidents just don't appear on the registers. And 2 of the most prominent that come to my mind recently, the Covenant school shooting, in which a trans-identifying killer massacred Christian children when they were at school, and of course the Annunciation school shooting, another coincidentally trans-identifying shooter, killing school children. The fact that these were shootings related to churches, related to faith, is no coincidence at all. And the fact that Charlie Kirk said that what he most wanted to be remembered for was his faith is no coincidence either. He was absolutely right, and that's the heart of the matter.
Let me, I'm almost done, Mr. Chairman. I know my time is nearly at an end, but I just want to press on this point. What message do you think it sends, Mr. Knowles, when our own government implicitly encourages this kind of anti-Christian animus? And I'm thinking in particular of the infamous FBI memo in which the Biden DOJ and FBI attempted to recruit informants into Catholic parishes, in particular traditional Latin Mass Catholic parishes. This is our government now effectively telling the world, we think these believers are kind of crazy. I mean, we think they need to be spied on. These people need to be watched. We need informants in the choir. We need them in the pews. We need them at Mass on every Sunday. What kind of a message do you think that sends when our own government is attempting to spy on people of faith and put spies into pews in churches?
4 words, Senator. The message is, don't go to church. And coincidentally, I'm here today to testify about this event at the University of Pittsburgh when Antifa threw an explosive during one of my events. The FBI reached out to me afterward. They asked if I would speak, and I said no, because the story had just come out that the FBI had been infiltrating Catholic parishes under the Biden administration. We know that the DOJ had been prosecuting nuns, had been going after pro-lifers, had been going after Christians broadly, and I couldn't take that risk. A damning fact about how our government has operated and the position of Christians in the United States.
I just want to leave everybody in the room and watching this with one more picture of Mark Houck. Speaking of pro-lifers, Mark Houck is a devout Christian, believes in the right to life of every American. Here he is with his beautiful family. Our own government sent an FBI SWAT team to this man's door at 5 a.m. to arrest him with guns drawn in front of his children. He was later acquitted, I might add. They charged him with ridiculous crimes that would amounted to essentially praying in front of an abortion clinic. I think it's time for our government to do some soul searching. You talk about soul searching that needs to go on. How about the fact that our own government in the last 4 years used the FBI against pro-lifers, used the FBI against Christian parents, attempted to recruit spies into Catholic churches? When our government is doing this, is it any surprise that we see deranged lunatics out there shooting people like Charlie Kirk? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to each of the witnesses. Mr. Knowles, welcome to the swamp. I will say I'm very confused being in a room with you and there are no cigars and no scotch. I cannot recall the last time that transpired. I appreciate the testimony of everyone here. The topic we're considering is, I think, of exceptional importance. There is an epidemic of politically motivated violence. And the politically motivated violence in this country is overwhelmingly emanating from the left. We saw that during the Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots across the country as cities across America burned. We saw that during the anti-Semitic protests on college campuses, as Jewish students in particular were threatened and feared for their lives. We saw that with the pro-open border riots in Los Angeles and other cities. And we saw that tragically with the murder of Charlie Kirk, someone who was a good friend to many of us and an extraordinary leader. Mr. Knowles, you too were targeted on a college campus. What does it say about the state of our universities that holding a debate on a public campus now requires police barricades, bomb squads, and body armor?
My question is, what are the universities for? Aren't the universities for educating students? Aren't the universities for pursuing truth? If the universities are not advancing those goals, as manifestly they are not, then I think we need to strongly consider defunding those universities. I think we need to strongly consider not sending our children to those universities because they have been perverted against their very purpose. And this is so apparent in much of the left-wing discourse. To me, it seems, hearing even mainstream Democrats on this, that for them, their violence is speech and our speech is violence. There was no more gracious or generous or charitable debater on college campuses than Charlie Kirk. He always endeavored to hear out the other side, to steelman their arguments, to give them the benefit of the doubt, and he was killed for it. He was killed for ideological reasons, and that has to be an inflection point. And as far as I'm concerned, if the universities and the political order cannot shore up a healthy marketplace for debate, they're useless.
Look, I think you are absolutely right. I think our universities are failing profoundly in that regard. At Columbia University during the anti-Semitic protests, the Orthodox rabbi on campus sent an email to the Jewish students on campus and said, "Do not come to campus because the university cannot and will not protect you." That is a fundamental abdication of their most essential responsibility, which is to protect their students. And Columbia refused to protect them because ideologically they sided with the violent protesters. And let me ask, the attack on your event, was that a spontaneous protest, or was it organized, planned, and well-funded?
It was the latter, Senator, and we can point to the specific networks, we can point to the anarchist bookshops, we can point to the email addresses for the tax-free, nonprofit organizations that were funneling the donations to these people. This is organized left-wing crime.
I'm not the only person who noticed in the anti-Semitic protests that the tents all matched. There is real money. There is real money, and it is many of the same networks, unfortunately, whether they are open border radicals, whether they are anti-capitalist communists, whether they are jihadists. The funding is steady and significant. Mr. Wolf, in 2020, under your leadership, DHS officers stood on the front lines in Portland, facing more than 100 consecutive nights of siege against the Marco Hatfield Federal Courthouse. Officers were assaulted with commercial-grade fireworks, lasers, and Molotov cocktails. Were those random outbursts, or were they coordinated, resourced operations with strategy, logistics, and financing behind them?
Oh, without a doubt, Senator, they were coordinated. I had the chance to visit Portland during the middle of that 100-day period, and from the Hatfield Courthouse where I was, you could see into the park below tents, a lot of tents, and I asked my federal officers at the time, "What's in the tents?" They said, "Well, we don't know. We can't go over there. The Portland police won't help us understand what's going on over there." We eventually sent an undercover agent there, and his response was, "It's weapons, it's munitions, it's a variety of different things that get resupplied almost on a daily basis."
Wow.
So yes, organized.
These same checkbooks are funding the chaos in Minneapolis, in Portland, in Los Angeles. It's why I've introduced the Stop Funders Act. The Stop Funders Act adds rioting as a predicate offense to RICO to enable the Department of Justice to use the full tools that have been directed at the mafia to go after the corrupt enterprise. Because at the end of the day, the thug who is engaged in violence is committing criminal acts, but the billionaire who is trying to tear down this country by writing checks to fund it bears, in many ways, far greater responsibility. Mr. Wolf, in your judgment, would passing the Stop Funders Act, adding rioting as a predicate act to RICO, assist DOJ in going after and stopping these coordinated, politically motivated acts of violence?
Yeah, absolutely it would. And happy to say that America First Policy Institute has endorsed that piece of legislation as well, because you have to understand where they're getting their finance, where they're getting their backing. And if you can't use the resources that the Department of Justice should be using, it's going to make it very difficult. In 2020, we simply ran out of time before we left office in 21. It's my understanding the Department of Justice and FBI are looking into this financing. So giving them additional quivers in their bag, I think would be very good.
Thank you.